We're live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Global outrage grows after Hamas releases footage of malnourished Israeli captives. Hamas says ICRC access only if 8 corridors open. Security Council to meet on the matter on Tuesday. In Brazil, supporters of ex-President Bolsonaro rally across the country to protest against President Lula and Supreme Court demand amnesty for those involved in an alleged coup attempt. Philippines President Ferdinand Marcos to arrive in New Delhi on a state visit to hold bilateral talks with Prime Minister Modi on issues of mutual interest, his first visit to India after taking charge. And in cricket, fifth and final test between India and England at the Oval move on to day 5 as reinforced stumps to be taken early. England 339 for 6 at stumps trail India by 35 runs. And on to the details now. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu requested the help of the International Committee of the Red Cross on Sunday to aid hostages in Gaza. The comments came after Hamas released a video of the starved hostage digging his own grave. The Premier's office said he spoke to the ICRC coordinator for the region, Julian Lerison, and requested his involvement in providing food to hostages and their immediate medical treatment. Netanyahu also spoke with the families of the hostages and expressed profound shock over the materials distributed by the terror organizations. Over recent days, Hamas and its ally Islamic Jihad have released 3 videos showing 2 hostages seized during the October 7, 2023 attack on Israel that triggered the ongoing war. The images of Rom Braslavsky and Aviator David, both of whom appeared weak and malnourished, have fueled renewed calls in Israel for a truce and hostage release deal. Earlier in the day, tens of thousands of people had rallied in the coastal hub of Tel Aviv to call on Netanyahu's government to secure the release of the remaining captives. Braslavsky and David are among the 49 hostages taken during Hamas's 2023 attack who are still being held in Gaza, including 27 the Israeli military says are dead. Meanwhile, Hamas says it will allow aid for hostages if Israel halts airstrikes, opens permanent humanitarian corridors. While also, Hamas said it was prepared to coordinate with the Red Cross to deliver aid to hostages it holds in Gaza if Israel meets certain conditions. The ICRC said in a statement it was appalled by the harrowing videos and reiterated its call to be granted access to the hostages. A statement from Hostage Families Forum said Hamas comments about the hostages cannot hide that it has been holding innocent people in impossible conditions for over 660 days and demanded their immediate release. And until their release, Hamas has the obligation to provide them with everything they need. Also, the United Nations Security Council will hold a special session on Tuesday morning to discuss the 50 hostages still held by Hamas in Gaza. It was following a request by Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar. And the video of David drew criticism from Western powers and horrified Israelis. France, Germany, the United Kingdom and the US were among the countries to express outrage. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas said the images are appalling and expose the barbarity of Hamas, calling for the release of all hostages immediately and unconditionally. Meanwhile, aid is pouring in for Gaza. Several countries conducted 7 airdrops on Sunday, carrying 61 tons of aid into Gaza. The operation included 2 aircrafts from Jordan, Germany, United Arab Emirates, France and Belgium. Well, the Israeli military agency that coordinates aid said that 4 tankers of UN fuel had entered to help in operations during the past week. Over 23,000 tons of humanitarian aid in 1,200 trucks had entered Gaza but had yet to be driven to aid distribution hubs by United Nations and other international organizations. And U.S. President Donald Trump said Special Envoy Steve Witkoff may travel to Russia this coming week. Trump said Witkoff may travel to Russia potentially on Wednesday or Thursday, as he warned that he would impose sanctions if Moscow does not agree to a ceasefire with Ukraine before Friday.
Well, there'll be sanctions, but they seem to be pretty good at avoiding sanctions. You know, they're wily characters, and they're pretty good at avoiding sanctions. So we'll see what happens. But Steve is focused right now on the border in terms of, we're talking about with Gaza, getting people fed. And he may be going, I think next week, Wednesday or Thursday, may be going to Russia. They would like to see him. They've asked that he meet, so we'll see what happens.
While Trump also hinted of imposing sanctions on Russia if it doesn't agree to ceasefire. The U.S. leader, who returned to power on a pledge to swiftly end the conflict, has in recent weeks rolled back his earlier conciliatory approach towards Moscow and signaled openness to arming Ukraine. And moving on, supporters of Brazil's former president, Jair Bolsonaro, accused of plotting a coup after he lost the 2022 general election, gathered on the streets of several Brazilian cities to protest against Supreme Federal Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes and President Lula da Silva. The protesters called for amnesty for those involved in the alleged coup attempt days after Lula's inauguration in January 2023. Bolsonaro, currently under house arrest, was unable to attend the protest in person. However, he made a brief appearance via phone during a rally in Rio de Janeiro with his son to address the crowd. Sunday's protest came amid heightened tensions between Brazil's judiciary and Bolsonaro's supporters. And Brazilian President Lula da Silva emphasized the need for caution in discussions with the United States regarding tariffs imposed by President Donald Trump. During a congress of his party, Lula acknowledged that diplomacy requires restraint, saying he recognizes there is a limit to his fight with the U.S. government. He added that he might not be able to say everything he wants to say, so he must focus on what is feasible to discuss. His statement came as tensions escalated following Trump's announcement of a 50% tariff on Brazilian goods and sanctions against Brazilian Justice Alexandre de Moraes under the Magnitsky Act. Also, Trump signed an executive order slapping 50% tariffs on Brazilian imports. A Brazilian judge was also sanctioned by the United States for what President Donald Trump calls a witch hunt against a far-right ally. And U.S. President Donald Trump announced on Sunday that he plans to name a candidate to fill an open position at the Federal Reserve within the next couple of days. This vacancy arose after Fed Governor Adriano Kugler announced her early resignation last Friday, leaving a key role open at the central bank. In addition, Trump said he will also announce a new head for the Bureau of Labor Statistics within 3 or 4 days. This comes after he fired BLS Commissioner Erica McEntherfair, accusing her of falsifying job numbers. President Trump on Sunday stood by his decision to dismiss McEntherfair after the release of a disappointing jobs report, despite growing criticism over the move. And the U.S. Marshal Service posted a $7,500 reward for any information leading to the capture of the man accused of shooting 4 people dead in a Montana bar before he vanished, sparking a search for the suspect in the nearby mountains. Well, according to the authorities, the suspect, Michael Brown, aged 45, walked into the Owl Bar late on Friday morning and opened fire with a rifle, killing the bartender and 3 patrons, then fled the scene. A stolen pickup truck used as a getaway vehicle was later recovered, but law enforcement's last sighting of the suspect was during a brief pursuit about 2 hours after the shooting. Knudsen told reporters investigators have yet to determine a motive, but Brown lived near the bar, was a regular there himself, and presumably knew all 4 of his victims. And some global weather updates now. A blistering heat wave is sweeping across Spain and Portugal, with temperatures forecast to reach and in some areas exceed 40 degrees Celsius in the coming days. Spain's weather authorities have warned that some regions near the Guadiana and Guadalquivir rivers could see temperatures high about 42 degrees Celsius. The extreme heat is expected to persist at least through Thursday, August 7th. Hot and dry summers are common across the region, but more intense heat waves have contributed to destructive wildfires in recent years amid fast rising temperatures around the globe, with Portugal and Spain having had the hottest June on record. Scientists warn that rising global temperatures are intensifying heat waves and their consequences. Both countries recorded their hottest June on record this year, and officials are on high alert for potential wildfires. Well, several towns in eastern Australia were covered with the heaviest snowfall seen in decades over the weekend as severe weather swept through the region. The authorities said wild conditions led to flooding, left vehicles stranded and caused power outages affecting thousands of homes. Meteorologists stated that a cold front brought up to 40 centimeters of snow to parts of northern New South Wales, with snow also falling in parts of Queensland for the first time in a decade. Emergency services reported handling over 1,455 incidents, including more than 100 vehicles stranded due to snow. Storms caused damage to the buildings along with multiple major flood warnings. As green transition efforts step into the global spotlight, the International Maritime Organization has approved a legally binding net zero regulation on April this year. Southeast Asian countries have shown mixed reactions to the carbon tax announced by the IMO. Malaysia is among the countries that oppose the maritime carbon tax, saying it will increase the shipping cost starting from 2027. While Indonesia supports efforts to decarbonize the shipping industry, saying government will consider new alternative to conventional fuels, whereas Vietnam's shipping fraternity are strongly urging the government to introduce concrete financial support measures such as green credit packages, preferential loans, extended repayment terms and tax incentives. The IMO Net Zero framework is the first in the world to regulate greenhouse gas emissions from international shipping, aiming for net zero emissions by or around 2050. And still to come in this edition of DD India Live. Key sports bills on agenda as Parliament resumes amid disruptions over the Bihar voter list. Saptasur Music Festival to unite BIMSTEC nations in a symphony of traditional music and cultural harmony to be held today. And Made in India military drones key to success in Operation Sindoor. We'll get your ground report from Truce. Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Vipakshi Khurana, and moving on, President of Philippines Ferdinand R. Marcos will be on India visit from 4th to 8th of August. During his state visit, he will be accompanied by First Lady Madame Luis Araneta Marcos and a high-level delegation including several cabinet ministers, other dignitaries and senior officials, in addition to business representatives. This would be the first visit of President Marcos to India since assumption of office of the President of the Philippines. The visiting leader will hold bilateral discussions with Prime Minister of India Narendra Modi and External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar. He will also hold a meeting with his Indian counterpart Draupadi Murmu. Diplomatic relations between India and the Philippines were established in November 1949. Both countries have since developed a strong partnership across a wide spectrum of areas, including trade and investment, defense and security, maritime cooperation, agriculture, healthcare, pharmaceuticals and digital technologies. The two countries also engage closely at regional level, including through India's comprehensive strategic partnership with ASEAN. India's relations with the Philippines are an integral pillar of our Act East policy, Vision Mahasagar and our vision of the Indo-Pacific. The forthcoming state visit of President Marcos coincides with the 75th anniversary of India-Philippines diplomatic relations. Well, the visit is an opportunity for both leaders to set the path for future bilateral cooperation and to engage in regional and international issues of mutual interest. And now let's take a look at the agenda of the day at both houses of Indian Parliament on Monday. Well, the government will introduce two key legislations, the National Sports Governance Bill 2025 and the National Anti-Doping Amendment Bill 2025 in the lower house of the Parliament. The two bills are scheduled for consideration and passage in the lower house. The upper house will take up the carriage of goods by Sea Bill 2025 for consideration and passing. Apart from other legislative businesses, the bill has already been passed by the lower house. And India's Press Information Bureau's fact-check unit on Sunday officially dismissed social media post which falsely claimed, citing the Ministry of External Affairs, that India is considering suspending or reviewing bilateral agreements with the United States over hostile economic policies. While PIB, in a social media statement, clarified that no such statement was issued and labeled the claims as misinformation. It also shared photos of the misleading post where some accounts were seen posting false information with respect to ties between Washington and New Delhi. And in Jammu and Kashmir, Operation Akhal entered its fourth consecutive day on Monday with fierce exchanges of gunfire and intermittent blast continuing overnight in the dense forest of Kulgam district. The Indian Army has deployed its Hal Rudra attack helicopter armed with a 20 mm turret gun to support the operation. The operation was launched on the evening of the 1st of August based on specific intelligence inputs regarding the presence of terrorists. Joint teams of the Indian Army, Jammu and Kashmir Police, CRPF and the Special Operatives Group are involved in the ongoing operation. So far, 3 terrorists believed to be affiliated with Lashkar-e-Taiba have been killed, while 2 security personnel have sustained injuries. Search and firefighting operations are still underway. Indian security forces have intensified their counter-terrorism operations in Jammu and Kashmir, eliminating several terrorists in separate encounters over the past few days. Well, military drones completely designed and made in India were pivotal in India's success in Operation Sindoor. Our correspondent Nandita Dagar travelled to the Truce sector bordering the line of control with Pakistan and filed this special report on the UAVs which are deployed on India's borders.
This is a mini remotely piloted aircraft built by Asteria Industries, completely made in India, indigenous, a symbol of self-reliant India, Atmanirbhar Bharat. This is a UAV which is used primarily for surveillance and it runs on 2 modes, the turbo mode as well as the cruise mode. This is a huge force multiplier for the artillery units because it can go into the enemy territory and There it can identify the locations which have to be targeted by our artillery guns. The SW remotely piloted aircraft manufactured by Idea Forge Industries, which is completely made in India, indigenous, is also like the other mini remotely piloted vehicle, the AT-15. This also aids artillery units in detecting the targets and locations. It's armed with gimbals or electro-optic and infrared pods beneath its fuselage. This quadcopter, the Q6, is armed with this high-resolution camera, which is an electro-optical and infrared camera, which means that it can see objects at night time also in the dark. Quadcopter, it has 4 rotors. Again, it is aiding the artillery. Trinetra is another quadcopter. You can see that this works with a console, and it is remotely piloted by the army troops using this console. Extremely state of the art with a high resolution camera and turbo motors which run its 4 propellers. We all know what first person view drones did in Ukraine's Operation Spiderweb. Now this is an example of Indian Army's own initiative, own innovation. Our troops in the Indian Army, every battalion, the soldiers have made this first person view drone. I'd show you this joystick with which it can be steered. Of course, it's not flying right now, and this is for the navigation and steering of this first person view drone. An example of Indian ingenuity, Indian Army's ingenuity. This is the small payload. The payload it carries is an explosive, could be dynamite, could be TNT, could be RDX, or any other explosive that the Army chooses. Apart from this joystick which controls this FPV drone, we also have this head gear. The soldier can wear it, and when he puts it on his eyes, he can see exactly what the FPV drone is seeing. This FPV is a kamikaze drone, which means it's a suicide drone. Once it is launched, it will go into the enemy territory, bomb the target, and of course be destroyed there. With camera person Manmohan in the Dras sector, this is Nandita Dagar for DD India.
And moving on, India will host the first ever BIMSTEC Traditional Music Festival at New Delhi's Bharat Mandapam on Monday. The concert has been organized by Indian Council for Cultural Relations in association with Ministry of External Affairs and comprises traditional vocalist and instrumentalist from the 7 member nations, India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Myanmar, Nepal, Sri Lanka and Thailand. The 7 Nations One Symphony Music Festival features a hand-picked array of folk and classical music genres from the member nations. The multicultural musical tapestry honors age-old traditions and emphasizes cultural harmony. The festival seeks to promote people-to-people linkages through the conservation of endangered art forms and regional harmony. And on to some sports news now. The dramatic 5th and final test between India and England at the Oval moved on to day 5 as bad light and eventual rain forced stumps to be taken early on Sunday. India roared back into the contest after tea on day 4 as England were reduced from 101 for 3 to 337 for 6 with Centurions Joe Root and Harry Brook dismissed in the process. The match was slipping away from India with Shubman Gill's side made to pay after Mohammad Siraj's fielding blunder handed Brook a lifeline. However, 3 wickets from Prasidh Krishna and 2 from Siraj himself has thrown the game wide open. England are aiming to script a record test run chase of 374 at the Oval, while India must win to level the series and retain the Anderson Tendulkar Trophy. And renowned sand artist Sudarshan Patnaik marked the occasion of last Monday of the Hindu month of Shravan by crafting an intricate sand sculpture at Odisha's iconic Puri beach. The artwork pays tribute to Lord Shiva as devotees across India observe the final Monday of the holy month of Shravan, considered highly auspicious in the Hindu calendar. Patnaik's tribute added a visual and spiritual dimension to the day's observances. Patnaik globally acclaimed for his spiritual and socially themed sand sculptures, often uses his art to highlight cultural and religious events. All right, that's all for this edition of DD India Live. Well, let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code at the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Nipakshi Khurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.